Welcome in, y'all. Today we're going to discuss the ceilings and floors for this NFC North, a very good division. We'll start with the Packers, and every team in this division has a very, very difficult schedule, and the Packers are no exception. You look at the schedule, there's a lot of tough games up and down the list, and that definitely affects where they can be on this ceiling and floor. I believe they went 11-6 last season, and they're coming off a lackluster playoff loss to the Eagles, about 22-10, I think that was. Kind of a disappointing end to a season. They were very quietly pretty good last year. I feel like they weren't talked about. I think that's kind of the same this offseason. I think it has to do with they're a very well-rounded team. They don't have a bunch of superstars, but they don't have a bunch of weaknesses. So they're very well-rounded. But when we talk about a floor for this team, when you look at this brutal schedule, if they start dropping some of these tough games, you can't beat these top tier opponents. 7-10 is a realistic floor. It would be a worst case scenario, obviously, which is what a floor is. But I can't say they drastically improved from last year, and with a schedule this tough, you never know. Things can happen. You're a couple injuries away from a tough season. And then when we talk about ceiling, you talk about improving on last year, and I think they do everything right. They win some of these tough games, and I think you find yourself with a ceiling of 12-5. If they had an easier schedule, you could push that up. But if you look at that schedule, I think it's hard to convince me or anyone that higher than 12-5 is possible. That would be incredibly, incredibly tough. But I think 12-5 would be more than thrilling for Packers fans. Would probably win the division. So, we'll see about the Packers. It's tough, but 12-5 and 7-10. But next up, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings. This is a team that managed to win 14 games last season, which is incredibly impressive. And really, the team did not get worse, in my opinion. A lot of people are looking or kind of writing off this team this year, which baffles me because Sam Darnold left, but he is not that great. I can't say he is the reason they did that well. I think they are the reason he did that well. J.J. McCarthy's coming in, and I have belief in him, I think. I don't think they're going to win anywhere near 14 games, especially given how night and day different the schedule difficulty is. Last year it was pretty easy. That is important to remember, but it's definitely something to think about. So when we look at this schedule, it is incredibly tough, like all teams in the NFC North. And when you talk about a worst case scenario, maybe it's one of those scenarios where last year there was some luck with whether it's scheduling and close games. They didn't have that many close wins though, but you really think about scheduling, and if McCarthy ends up just kind of being a bust, which you can't rule out. You definitely can't rule that out. I think the floor you're looking at is 6-11 with this schedule because it's tough. It's really tough. Take a good hard look at it because that's a brutal schedule. And when you talk about ceiling, though, I think I'll go right on par with what I said for Green Bay, and I think I'm going to say 12-5 for this team, and I am high on them this year. I think there's no reason that they can't be a great team once again. The schedule is obviously more difficult, so 14 games, in my opinion, is out of the question. That will not be happening this season, but 12-5 as a ceiling is very realistic in my mind. I think that is within reach, but I think 9 or 10 wins might be more likely given the young QB and the schedule. So we will see. It's definitely a test. All these teams are facing this schedule, so I think it could be a situation where all four teams are kind of like at that 10-7-ish mark because they all kind of beat up on each other and no one's able to kind of escape and get up to that 13-14 win threshold. But we will see. But I think 12-5 ceiling and 6-11 floor for these Minnesota Vikings. Now, next up, we talk about the current Kings of the North, 15-win Detroit Lions, and I'm just singing the same old song here. Their schedule is brutal, and it is beyond brutal. Look at their road schedule. It is unbelievably tough, maybe the toughest I've ever seen. And it's at the point, there might be one or two of these, they're favored by like 1 point, but they might be underdogged in all their road games, at least outside of the division. Even the divisional ones, though, it's not like going to Minnesota, Green Bay, or even Chicago anymore is easy. So brutal schedule. It's tough, and you lose both coordinators. You maybe slightly decrease in talent, but this is still an elite roster. When we talk about floors, again, worst case scenario, 8-9, and that would suck. That would be horrible. I don't expect them to go that low. I'd be surprised if they had a losing record. But when you look at this schedule and you face the adversity of losing those coordinators and stuff, you can't rule it out. It would be a down year, and maybe it would help them bounce back next year. Who knows? But I don't expect them to be that low, but it's definitely a possibility. But now when we flip side talk about ceiling, the schedule, it's so unbelievably brutal. One of the toughest I've ever seen, at least when you talk about road games. It's hard for me to say higher than 12-5, but this is an elite roster that won 15 games last year, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll put their ceiling at 13-4. If they find a way to just go into all of these places on the road and steal wins, then anything's possible for them this year. So we will see, but I think 8-9 and 13-4 for the Lions. They fall somewhere in there. I think 10 or 11 wins is the most likely outcome for them this season. And next up, we do turn our attention to the Chicago Bears. How much did they really improve is the question. I think this team has a lot of potential. I think Caleb Williams has so much potential, and Ben Johnson coming in as the coach, I think you're going to see a big improvement from this team. And this is a team that could benefit from. It would have been nice if they had a schedule like the Patriots. Now, the Patriots situation, they're coming in. The Bears certainly have a better team than them, but similar idea, QB, year 2, new, very good head coach you would expect. And the Patriots situation is they have a very easy schedule, so it kind of allows them to win a bunch of games, get their confidence up, maybe make the playoffs, get some experience. The Bears, like I've been saying for these other teams, face a very, very brutal schedule, so that does limit their ceiling. When we talk about a floor, again, worst case scenario, I think there will be several wins above this. But when we talk about worst case scenario, we see no improvement from Caleb Williams, in his sophomore year. Ben Johnson does not turn out to be magical. We have seen very, very prolific offensive coordinators turn into bad head coaches. However, we've also seen them turn into exceptional head coaches. So it could go either way. But when talking worst case, maybe he just doesn't pan out. I think the floor is 5-12. That would, of course, be disappointing. But, everything kind of have to fall apart there. And then as far as ceiling goes, I'd like to put this number higher, but I really cannot due to the schedule. The ceiling is going to be 11-6 for me. And I think that would be an unbelievable success for this team if they won 11 games. That would almost certainly get them in the playoffs in the NFC. I think they're most likely to end up right around 8 or 9 wins. They could push for 10. We'll see. But I do expect a much improved team, but they also have a tougher schedule. So we will see how that affects them. Super excited. This division is going to be a dogfight. Every divisional game is going to be close. It's going to be tight. It's going to be important. And it's going to be a divisional race right down to the end. So we will see who comes out of it. Let me know what y'all think.